and Justin Paulsen, yes. And we're gonna go ahead and start. My name is Isabel Guerra, and I'm currently in my senior year of high school, and something I am currently interested in is politics and law. So since many students did not show up today due to events that are happening around their lives, one of the questions that the students asked was, what does the council really do?
How would we like to attack this?
Go for it.
All right.
All right. I'll stand up if that's okay with you, Jeff. Does that work? Okay. What does the council do? And specifically from a youth perspective, what does the council do? San Juan County Council is the legislative body for San Juan County, so we make the rules. We do a lot of listening to the public before we make rules, and then we delegate authority for the administration of those rules to our county manager, and the county manager oversees the departments in executing the work that we have decided needs to get done. I think the most important part of that discussion is we listen to the public. We are the interface. We are the ones that the public comes to when they have concerns. They will often go to folks who are employees within the organization, but they're working at the direction of their boss, and their boss is working at the direction of their boss. And so it's our job to be really clear and really honest about what our priorities are so that the end effect to the citizens of our county is a positive one. So that's my interpretation of what my job is.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Isabella. It's very nice to have your name on my barn, on our property. So it's very cool. What do you call it? Cloud graffiti?
Yes, cloud graffiti.
That's pretty cool. I'm learning something every day, which is what my friends are asking me to do. So I was San Juan County Council member from 2013 to 2020, and I have a slightly different perspective because we're a charter county, and the state of Washington allows constitutional counties, which are set in the state constitution, are charter counties, and most of the water-based counties are charter counties, so we get to kind of set our own rules within a reason. But we are the executive, administrative, and legislative authority for San Juan County. So with two people, almost anything can be changed or modified in San Juan County as long as it doesn't compete with the other elected officials, which are law enforcement and auditor, treasurer, assessor, et cetera. We wrote an ordinance, or I wrote an ordinance with the seatmates that took some of our authority and passed it on to the county manager, who runs sort of the administrative side of what we do. But basically, Justin said this, and he's correct. We spent a lot of time trying to understand what our employees are interested in, what our community is interested in. But when it comes down to it, we fill potholes. We help give shots. We try to work with legislators to fix ferry issues. Kind of anything that you see that touches any citizen here will probably have some role, either directly or indirectly. So we're really just a representation of what your interests are in San Juan County. And the more we can do to figure out how to engage younger people, I think the better, especially as a getting close to 60-year-old person, it's really hard to reach out. So I really appreciate the thought of being here, helping us understand that.
Thank you so much for answering that first question. And my second question for you both is, what future plans will you both have if a student wishes to talk to you guys about a situation that they have or something that they would like to happen in the future? How would you approach to that?
Let me just go back.
Yeah, that's cool.
Another good question. I think we, as an elected body, have the responsibility to meet with anyone in our community immediately within 24 or 48 hours, at least get back to them via email. And the more you can listen to people's interests, the better understanding that you have. And I spent a lot of time in the last couple of months listening and learning from folks. A lot of, and this is a little bit older group, but a lot of the younger contractor or construction folks that are in their early 20s, I'm sure we'll talk about this, but it's affordable housing. And even if they're making good money, how do we do that? And I think a big thing that we got to figure out is how can we make this a place that you want to come back to if you go away for school or trade or whatever you do, that it's accepting for you to come back. You feel comfortable here, you have peers here, you can get a job, you can get a house. And those are the stuff that I think we really have to focus on in the short and long term.
Thank you. So what I think the question is you're asking is how can you be engaged? Like how can you have an impact on what's happening in our San Juan County government? And I think right now there's a couple things that are being done in some of the county committees that are actually really forward-looking at this. The Climate Sustainability Committee, which is really informing what is happening with the comp plan right now. We have a youth representative on that committee. So San Juan County is starting to take the turn to start actually include young people in the decision-making process and the policy-setting process. The other thing that we did in the last 2 years is they've created internship programs. And so in the summers, when you're off at school and you come back here to make all the money that you need to make to survive the next year at school, there's paid internship programs now at the county. Communications, with the land bank, with environmental stewardship. I think there's 5 different departments that we're doing internships. And so that's a way to bring you into that. And the other great part about that is we get to train our youth in the jobs in the county, and hopefully out of that, we're building a workforce from within. And so ultimately, back to the legislative question, our job is to listen. As a youth, you are a citizen in this county just like your parents are, just like your grandparents are. And it's our job to make sure we have time for you and your commentary.
Great, thank you for answering that second question. And my final question to you both is, what are your biggest weaknesses and what are your biggest strengths?
My least favorite job interview question is, what are your biggest weaknesses and what are your biggest strengths? I vowed as a business owner, I would never ask anybody that question again because it's a tough one. My biggest weakness is I have a really difficult time saying no. I want to make sure that everything is working. I want, if a problem comes at me, I want to solve it. And so I jump in and try and solve it. And then the next problem comes, and you jump in and try and solve it. And then the next problem comes, and you can see where this is going, because eventually you can't solve all the problems. At some point you have to realize that you have a personal capacity that you have exceeded by constantly trying to put out all the fires. And now you've put out no fires, and all of the problems are still a problem. That's my biggest failure. My biggest strength, I believe, is my ability to communicate with people and listen to people with my mouth shut and my ears wide open. And do that with people that I may not agree with. People who fundamentally, we're not even on the same page. But if we don't bring everybody into a conversation as we're trying to solve problems, ultimately the outcome is not going to be a sustainable one, because we are equipping the forces that are working against us with ammunition to come back at us and say, you didn't listen. You never heard my perspective. So we have to probe. So my strength is to bring everybody to the table and assure that we've included every voice that we possibly can. There will be people who don't want to come to the table. That's okay. But bring everybody in and have a really good, honest, thorough conversation. And then we can move forward and make decisions that are in the best interest of our entire community.
Can I list a few of the worst parts from that? Okay. Biggest problem for me is that when I was in office, I tried to please everyone, and that's almost impossible here. You need to listen to everyone and try to have an ability to find a collaborative solution that works for folks. The next thing is I thought I knew everything, especially during the pandemic, because we spent a lot of time alone trying to solve problems, and I didn't listen. And that'd be the third thing, is that I needed to listen more, and I'm really trying hard. So I'd also say that those 3 things are things that I'm trying to correct moving forward to be a better collaborator. I also think when I was in office before, I wanted to run council and be the most important person there. And that caused some issues with my seatmates that I don't want to have again. And my strength is that I feel like we all have superpowers. I look at a lawnmower and it breaks. I try to cut the yard and I get allergies, and it's really hard to do that. government, budgeting, and vision are things that are my strengths. Like the code just makes sense to me in my head. I can't explain it, but I can sit through a budget meeting and come up with really quick mathematical solutions. I've been in business for a long time. And I just love to serve. And so when someone calls you up and says, hey, there's a pothole in front of the Episcopal Church, and you're like, thank you for that, and then you get it filled the next day, I think that's really gratifying that you're able to serve the community. So I think the service is the biggest strength for me is that I want to serve and I want to help this community, and I love it more than outside of my family.
Great, muchas gracias for answering my questions. I really appreciate you. And that will be it for the students section.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What a pleasure.
Yeah, pleasure. Thank
Well
you.
done. Nicely done.
One on the left.
This one.
Yep, there we go.
Hi, I'm Maria Poblete. I'd like to welcome you again and thank you for spending some time with us on this. I want to especially thank San Juan's Today for being here. They're going to post this for people who weren't here to be able to listen to the discussion. I want to thank Cindy Wolf, our council member, who's here in a personal capacity. I want to thank Senor Douglas, who volunteered to help us with language access, and Isabel, who helped to volunteer to help us with family access, and Diego, who gave out the cards. And I want to thank the Orcas Women's Coalition who put this together. We're going to start with some updates about what's on the ballot besides this District 2 race and ways to get involved. It's a scary time in the politics of our country, and it's also a hopeful time somehow at the same time, right? It's like the stakes are really high. There's some really good possibilities, there's really bad possibilities, and rooms like this are where we determine whether it's the hopeful future or the worst case scenario, or if it's somewhere in between, who we're gonna be in it with, right? So I want to thank you for making that time today to be in community and to get in on this whole question of democratic rights that we need here as much as anywhere else. And the way we're going to do after we get the sort of informational, get involved updates, we're going to use these little cards to write questions. So if you don't like talking in crowded rooms, go ahead and write it down here. And if you do like talking in crowded rooms and you're comfortable with that, go ahead and write it here. And if you're not sure that is the right question for this group, or whether somebody else has that question, just write it down and we'll batch them together and stuff, and we'll see how we do. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, thank you. We do have, there's various other announcements. I'll give them after, I think, but let's start with Cindy and the how to get involved announcement.
Should we stay up here, Cindy?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Hi, Cindy Wolf with Orcas Women's Coalition. I'll talk very quietly because this microphone picks up a lot. As far as getting involved is concerned, we are a coalition of women on Orcas Island and trans people, and we welcome anybody who wants to get onto our mailing list. There's a clipboard over there with Deborah and laptop, and you can sign up there. There are also postcards available and stamps for anyone who wants to do get out the vote postcarding. So, and they're fun postcards that have a lot of space for you to draw whatever you want on them and send them to whoever you like. Although Marguerite Green can help you with getting links for places to get addresses to send those postcards if you need them. There is also a sheet over there, which I encourage you to take a picture of, that has links on it for some progressive voting guides. There is the Hughes voting guide. There's also, The Stranger does a really good interview series with candidates and good thorough investigation of issues. And there's also, for more local advice, there is the Guillemot guide. And so that link is over there as well. And we are going to start, let's see, we're at 4:25. I guess we can start talking about the initiatives, and we might ask the candidates here to participate in that. So I think one thing to mention is that the county council took a vote and passed a resolution in opposition to initiative 2117. And the important thing to know about these initiatives is that there are 4 of them on the ballot. They are all sponsored by a billionaire named Brian Haywood, and also the chair of the Republican Party in the state of Washington. All of these initiatives are trying to, if you're voting yes, you're voting to repeal things that the legislature passed for us. So 2117 is a carbon tax, and it taxes industry and then uses that money to do things like pay for salmon habitat restoration, for air quality, for environmental justice projects all over the state. So the thing you need to remember about that one is it would be really, really, really hard on the environmental and climate resilience efforts in this state to have that repealed. So just no on that. Initiative 2109. I would like to hear from each of you briefly what you think of that initiative, and that is the capital gains tax. That is the effort to repeal the capital gains tax.
Start with you, Mr. Paulsen.
Okay, excellent. 2109, all right, repealing capital gains tax, and I believe, I don't know the exact percent, but I believe this hits like 0.1% of the population in Washington State that this tax applies to. So it's the first $250,000 in capital gains removed in a year you have to pay tax on. And that tax is designated to a fund that's called the Educational Legacy Trust Account. So whoever's paying those taxes, I will not be paying that tax ever in my lifetime. And I would hazard a guess that most of the people in this room will not be paying that tax in their lifetime. But that money is getting targeted to K-12 education. It specifically is funding childcare, so improvements to the childcare services in Washington State. And Washington State has one of the most progressive groups working towards improving access and quality of childcare education in the country. And this is a new tax, and so we're just now starting to see some of that money actually flow into our early childhood education institutions. And that's something that's very near and dear to my heart.
Say disclosure.
Yeah, full disclosure. My family is deeply involved in early childhood education and has been for almost 3 decades now, with my wife running a childcare center. If that is repealed in the next 5 years, it will remove $2.5 billion with a B dollars from education services. And that is money that is being budgeted in programs right now. So the correct answer, and what Cindy didn't say, is just say no, and this is not me resurrecting an old Reagan slogan. All of these initiatives are no's until you get to the line at the bottom that talks about the local initiative, which is the land bank, and then that's a yes. So make sure you read, and no, yes.
Thank you very much. Now I'm going to hand the microphone to Mr. Hughes.
Thank you very much, Cindy. Going back to 2117, that is definitely like a heck yes. I mean, heck no. This is bad thing. Because I'm knowing everything too about the land bank. But what a lot of people aren't really saying is that since Tim Eyman took away the MVAT funding, which is the motor vehicle excise tax through I-695, ferries haven't had a dedicated funding mechanism, and this new carbon tax credit or taxing thing is one of the best ways for us to build new ferries. And so if we want to keep the hybrid cool ferries we're looking at building, this has got to stay on. We have to keep taxing polluters and using that money out of some of these corporate accounts to build really cool, efficient ferries. And I think Washington State Ferries is one of the biggest polluters and one of the biggest users of even though it's clean diesel, they're one of the biggest users of clean diesel, which means they're one of the biggest polluters in the state of Washington. So we need that. If you're going to do anything, write letters to get people to say no on 2117 for our community is one of the best ways to keep and preserve and try to improve ferries in the long run. In regards to the capital gains tax, I'm a no as well. The only thing I would look at some point, we have a lot of interesting small family, I say small family, but a lot of businesses that were built here, like Bart's House is a really great example. Part of the reason they sold their company, which is now a quarter or half of their original pharmacies have closed, was because of this estate tax. So I'm not saying they shouldn't pay their own, but how do we do privately held companies that are big and a big part of our community? Hagen's is another great example. They had to go, this is before them, but Hagen's has basically been shuttered and destroyed, even though it's still there. So is there a way for family-owned bigger companies that this would be applicable? Because I too, hopefully will never have to be part of this tax as well. But I just think we have these institutional-based companies that have been started in Washington. How do we keep them whole and not belong to other companies that are gonna not have the same philosophy we did? And maybe there's not a path, because they definitely need to pay, but how do we do some kind of a transition so that the families can continue running a business that their grandparents or great-grandparents may have started? I mean, the market's a great example. It's been in the same family since 1897. Not sure how that would apply to it, but I just think it's something to look at over time. We have the most progressive tax system, or one of the most progressive tax systems in the country, so we have to continue to look at ways like capital gains tax to make money, to help run the programs that are underfunded in the state.
Okay, let's jump on to Initiative 2066. This it was a law that was passed about planning for mixes of the energy sources for the largest utility in the state. Do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, that's good.
So 2066, if I understand the opposite, or the reason why 2066 is on the ballot, it is the petroleum and gas industries are fighting the work that is being done on the conservation side to shift things to more efficient electric heating, cooling, and other more innovative ways to reduce our carbon footprint in the state. And so what they are asking the state, what they're asking with this initiative is to restrict the ability of the state to input these rules into building codes. And the incentives that are coming with a lot of the work that is doing that. So basically it's kind of a preemptive strike to say, no more, we're not going to allow you to push this electrification of heating and cooling, electrification of appliances, energy efficient building practices. We want you to maintain the requirement that utilities, that it's like the natural gas utilities, and it's mainly in the big metropolis areas where right now, if you are the gas purveyor in the city of Seattle, you are required to provide service to all new neighborhoods and residences that are in that area. This is going to maintain that. What the codes are trying to do is disincentivize the extension of all of those utilities out so that we can have more efficient and more environmentally friendly methods in the work that we're doing. So this is sort of a preemptive strike to take away the ability of the state to encourage efficient practices. So again, no.
Thank you. Thank you. I agree, no, as well. It's interesting. We hire or we vote for our legislative elected officials to go to Olympia and to do a job. And I'm not necessarily sure the founding founding people of Washington envisioned the initiative process to turn over every piece of legislation that was meaningful for our community and our state. And so part of me is like, let's just let stuff happen and make it work. And so I think we have to get much better on many things that we do for energy efficiency in this state. I think this is leading at some point to maybe not allowing natural gas or propane as a heating mechanism or a cooking mechanism. I sure like cooking on a propane stove, but I think we can find a better way to do it. And I think we have to not limit our legislature in coming up with innovative, progressive ideas that will save the environment. We have so many things to do. Like, I'd love to see them, and I would support this, getting a single-use plastic ban in the whole state of Washington, if not starting here in San Juan County, which I'm sure would go through the same kind of initiative process for someone who questions it. So I want the legislature to do their job. The initiative process is a really important thing in the state of Washington. So I do like it. It's kind of like us having the charter, which allowed us to be the only GMO-free county in the country, which I'm really excited about. We haven't done anything with it yet, but it's a good method of doing things. I just wish it wasn't trying to handcuff our legislative body. So I'm a definite no, and I think we should find ways to further expand and working with our legislators, how we can be a better building and use of environmentally damaging products in the future.
Okay, and we're gonna finish up on the no's with 2124. And this one is pretty important to those of us in the Women's Coalition because women are by and large still the people who are expected to do the elder care in families. So this is an important one. And I'm gonna start with you, Mr. Hughes. Oh, Justin, you wanna start? Okay.
2124. So this is the recently instated long-term care insurance payroll deduction, which is now happening. People like myself, people like my employees, we've been paying this, I think, for a year and a half. And it is what and this is oversimplifying it, I call it a state version of Social Security for long-term care. And so I, as a working person, everybody in my family as working people, all of my kids, are now paying a very small portion of their payroll is being deducted to go into a long-term care account that's in the care of the state. And that account is going to grow over their working lifetime. And when we hit, I believe it's 65, I guess, I don't know the exact date, there will be an account for each of us at the state level to help supplement long-term care needs. And it's actually it's pretty innovative in how they're allowing the money to be used. It can be used for physical care. It can be used for hiring caretakers. It can be used for modifications to home to increase accessibility in your house. It's got a really broad usage. And as somebody my parents are both almost in their 80s, and I'm looking at how am I going to take care of them, and then I'm looking downhill at my kids and thinking, how in the world are they going to be able to take care of me? And for me, this is an absolute, it's not just a no, it's a no-brainer. Like, why anybody is fighting against this, I have no idea. I look forward to when I am older and I need help and I need some long-term care, knowing that just because I didn't put enough pennies away in the bank, knowing that there is an account there to help me when I need it and help my wife when she needs it, and to help ease the burden on my kids. So this one is not just a no. I would love to hear the argument. I don't know what the argument is against it. So let's maintain this. It's really, really, really important.
I agree as well, and I think in 2018 or 2019, I served in the Northwest Regional Council, which is it's an entity that San Juan County owns in connection with Island County, Whatcom County, and Snohomish County, and senior services in our region. We worked on this together to support the legislation. So I would never want to see this go away. I would only ask that we also include family members to be able to be considered as caregivers as part of this program. It's been in and out of the subject matter for a while. Sometimes there's this weird feeling that this might be not fair to other people, but I think, who's gonna care for an elder in their family better than a family member? So, and oftentimes these family members are spending, 10, 12 hours a day by themselves, not able to work somewhere else. It's a stressful environment. For someone who's not related, but imagine I did a little bit of work with my mom and my grandfather. And it's hard. And I think the fact that if you're gonna do this and help support your family, and if your family can't really afford that, this could also help pay your family to take care of you. So I think it's a really important initiative that we should say no on, but also let's try to expand it and provide more coverage over time to look at all options for care, not just paid professional, but also internal family assistance.
Okay, with that, I'm going to turn this over to Anne Marie Shanks from Orcas Homes Coalition, and also with the Renew campaign for the county land bank.
I think I can speak here and you can.
Whoops, I think the TV can't.
Oh.
Yep.
So thanks a lot for including the Renew campaign in your discussion today. And it's really great to have the support of the San Juan County Council for this effort. All of our existing council members are supportive of it. And I think all of the council candidates are supportive of it in some capacity. And we're lucky to have our two members here today also supportive of the effort. I was appointed as a land bank commissioner by Cindy this year, so I'm kind of still into the learning curve on a lot of the nuances of how we manage and steward our lands. Joining us today is the chairman of the Land Bank Commission, who is also here in his capacity as a volunteer in the community. I also wear another hat, which is I'm the president of the Opal Community Land Trust, which is our affordable housing program. So you can imagine how important this initiative is to me, because if we lose the land bank and all of the beautiful lands that we've been able to preserve over the past 24 years, we also lose the home fund. And these are things that are distinctly San Juan County. This is who we are. We love clean air. We love to see the orcas out in the water. We love clean water. We like to walk in the forest. I just came back from a Crescent Beach hike. We have so many beautiful places in our islands. Today at the Lum Farm, there's a farm tour. Did you know that the county stepped in and purchased that farm? And it is an active farm. And we're doing a very similar set of programs over on San Juan Island. And we're gonna have a really creative, innovative program on one of the farms that is starting up where we're partnering with the Grange. So it's very San Juan Islands that we have a land bank. It's very San Juan Islands that we have a home fund. And we have to stand up for these things. We get an opportunity every 12 years to say yes. And in a world where everybody's screaming no, let's say yes to something that is distinctly San Juan County and that we can be proud of. Because I know on this island, we have 200 and some homes that are affordable forever for our people. And this is a great gift, because without them, we aren't the San Juan Islands. We want to have economic diversity, just like we want economic diversity in the environment. We want it in our people. So if you have anything else you'd like to know, ask Brian. I'm just joking around. I like to bring Brian into these conversations, so he doesn't feel left out.
You want us to comment?
Sure. Did you want the message?
I do want to quickly give a couple of pieces of information about land bank that I've seen some misinformation out there, and I want you to know these things. One thing is there's a lot of talk about how publicly owned lands shift a tax burden onto the rest of us. I want you to know that 16%, 16% of the land in San Juan County is publicly owned. This is the next lowest percentage of land that a county has that is publicly owned in our region is like 28%. So we have a very low public ownership of land, and you need to realize that when you're hearing this out there.
What's the other bit that I've heard?
Well, I'll let you guys talk, and then if I can think of it, I will.
So I have the 16%, and I'm looking at Brian to make sure I get this number right. I believe the land bank owns 4.1% of 4.5, sorry, it's off by 0.4. So the land bank itself owns 4.5% of all of the land in San Juan County. And then, as Cindy talked about, tax burden. Again, I'm gonna look at Brian to make sure I get this right. But it's a matter of $2, I believe, for every $100,000 of assessed value of your property. So if you own a piece of property that's worth $1 million, good for you if you do, that's going to cost you $20. The tax offset is $20 per year. Roughly what you're gonna spend going and getting a cup of coffee and a baked good in town. And from that trade-off, from that cup of coffee and from that baked good, we get some amazing properties. If anybody hasn't been up to the North Shore property that just opened up, amazing. It's beach access for our community. That's not right in the middle of East Sound. You can go down and walk on the beach and not hear a car drive past you, which is a novel concept. On San Juan Island, the watershed that serves the city of Friday Harbor, the land bank just in the last 2 years, I believe, has successfully preserved the land that surrounds the watershed. And that is a critical infrastructure piece that we don't think about when we're preserving land. They have secured the safety of the water supply for the town of Friday Harbor. That's an amazing asset to our community. And for me, it's worth $20 a year. It's probably worth double that. So that is why I'm supporting the land bank going forward, because I believe it's absolutely worth that investment and much, much more.
Thank you. I think it was said earlier, like, I can't believe that people are trying to get rid of this, which I can't believe that. And this is literally the coolest thing. I'm a local sovereignty person. We're the only county in the state of Washington, and one of the few in the country that has this ability that puts a tax, like a real estate excise tax, when people buy property so that we can preserve land. And the state was smart enough at that point in time that they said, okay, there's a chance, like some of the arguments, that if you take land out of the land rolls, it's going to increase the cost of land. So why don't we also give counties the opportunity to create a real estate excise tax, an additional one, that we can put on to collect money for affordable housing? It's brilliant. We should be proud. We should be like signs everywhere. Look how cool we are in San Juan County. And the fact that we're not is too bad, because this is an amazing opportunity for us to preserve land. It's expensive to live here. It's hard to find housing. We all live here because of this and how beautiful it is. And the land bank provides hundreds of thousands of acres that anyone can use to find their peace in their soul and think, having a house, having food sovereignty, having a good job, and having a place to find creative fulfillment, may it be painting or cooking, a hike on Crescent Beach, or Turtleback Mountain. It is the most majestic thing that we do. When we were able to, when I was in office, the land bank had the Argyle lots that we took, and the county purchased them and turned them over for a couple bucks to the land trust on San Juan to build housing. There's so many things. Lone Farm, the Lones are one of my favorite people. We got amazing farming going on there, Not quite working right now, but the mobile slaughter truck is still a pretty cool thing. Again, local sovereignty when it's working. To have someone come here and your farmers don't have to leave the island to get local food. So I wish the land bank would look at doing more things to provide access to farming. I'd love to see operational costs be used to put fencing in and utilities so that farmers can have access to land that they can farm. But I just can't think of a better thing that San Juan County does in the land bank. And I'm a 100% supporter. It was one of the best committees I sat on, I think, for 7 years when I was in office. And I learned so much from all of the land bank board members. Like we were pretty close to getting trails all the way from the dump to Fowler's Pond. There's just a lot of cool things we can do with this entity and provide people a place of solace that they can go experience the outdoors and appreciate, everyone can appreciate why it's so beautiful and why we live here.
Me too. And I do want to point out, your council purchased our lots. Our council got the San Juan Housing Trust lined up to develop the housing. Yeah. So the other piece, I remembered what I wanted to say. I have also heard at least one of the candidates talk about disentangling the housing money from the land bank money. That is something that would have to be done at a state level. And let me explain to you how these things are written. So, and this is also information that I've gleaned from various people in Olympia. The way that this all came about was that most places don't have a land bank because the real estate lobby is very, very powerful in Olympia. And our real estate people here in this county are actually very supportive of conservation. And so that is why the land bank was able to be instituted in San Juan County. And when that desire to have money for affordable housing came up, the bill that was able to move through the legislature was one of those things. Sometimes you get bills that are written for islands made up entirely of counties. That means that that was something that San Juan County wanted and nobody else did, but they were willing to move it through anyway. Well, that's kind of what happened with this land bank thing was the real estate excise tax for housing got tied to the land bank because, again, the real estate community was supportive and was willing to work with us here in the county because they understood how important it was to have a balanced housing situation. So it's something that, you know, maybe it will get disentangled sort of in a natural legislative process because it's something that's becoming more and more pressing for more and more counties across the state of Washington. But for the moment, they are wedded and we need to renew this thing. Okay. All right, so with that, we are going to take a 5-minute pause, and at 5 p.m. we will come back, and Maria is going to lead the forum for these two candidates, so you can ask anything you want.
Even better. We met at senior center. Our time together in Paris, going back about 15 years. Oh, yeah, what you do?
I had a great conversation.
What we try to do Yeah. Yeah, she offered those community testing. That's why I hate my nephew. Back finding stage without signs. He and his two brothers.
Hey, that's cool.
We'll start our discussion section, so find a seat. It doesn't even have to be the same seat you were in before. There's plenty right here in the most exposed part that nobody ever wants to sit in. All right, brave souls to the front. I appreciate you. Ooh, thank you. I have Natalia as our collector of questions. Thank you.
Hey, how are you, Andy?
Hey, I've got my own water, so if you want to just.
Oh, that's okay. I just need to go. My luck will tip that thing over, and that'll be.
Sorry, trying to be.
That's voter marketing right there. Me tipping over.
Welcome back. Thank you for the water. A few announcements about how to get involved. The Orcas Women's Coalition has a mailing list that you can sign up for over there. They don't send too many emails. And you need some emails sometimes, you know? And Kim has voter registration forms available for anybody who wants to register or wants to help register other people. There's get out the vote postcards that you can send out. And if you're in a position where you have extra time and passion, you can sign up at seedthevote.org to go to a swing state and go knock on some doors. Who knows? There's so much to be learned and so much at stake. Okay, so let's I have Natalia collecting your questions on these cards. If you've been noodling on the question and still haven't written it down, go ahead and you can just raise your hand and you can collect them. And I will start with a question. This is the Women's Coalition is putting on this event. Both of you talked earlier about listening and how important it was to you. So what do women need from local government?
There we go. Sorry about that. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank our moderator for both the Younger Persons Forum and Cindy for the stuff we just did and for you as well. And thank you to the Women's Coalition for putting and hosting this on. I'd like to do a very sincere thank you for all the issues the Women's Coalition has worked on over the years: immigration, LGBTQ plus rights, DEI work. I think we need to listen and help figure out how we can find help with food sovereignty, with housing, with good jobs. We run the pharmacy and there's only 2 men out of 25 in the pharmacy. I think most of the nonprofits in our community, like the big shout out and say thank you, are run by women in this community. We're very fortunate to have very well-meaning, strong, intelligent women that are the backbone of our community. So, I mean, I think we oftentimes need to learn from, I know I learn from my wife every minute of every day. On the immigration issues, you know, unfortunately I was in office when President Trump took over, and those were scary times, you know. And I wish I would have listened a little bit faster, but I agreed with a lot of folks that helped us pass some really great immigration laws. We just always have to be open. I think we need to figure out better ways to deal with childcare. We need to look at the 32-hour work week was an amazing activity that was put forward by our council, and how do we, you know, the things that we can do to make life, health, safety is really important. I've been endorsed, I think I'm the only candidate that's been endorsed by Planned Parenthood of Washington. My wife and I are probably the most pro-choice pharmacy owners in the state of Washington, if not the Western United States. We have done a lot of things for a lot of reasons to support our community here. I think reproductive health is the single most important thing that we can do. I mean, healthcare in general, but women should have a right to choose, everyone should have a right to choose how they run their life. And it's like, so to me is that I need to learn more how I can defend and support every person in this community, especially women. And where I don't know something, I need to know more about it. Because I mean, I'll stand in front of anyone for reproductive health rights and for people's right to choose. So I think it's just, there's certain core issues that may not be directly tied to the county, but they are tied to the county and every person in the county.
So I think to answer that question, I would emphasize that at a county level, what we need to be looking for is ways that we can provide more access and more incentives to the women in our community to build a stronger base. Because right now, Cindy referenced it, that women in our community, women across the world, often get relegated to the caregiver world, the caregiver position in the communities. And so when something goes wrong in the family, we fall back on the women in our families to deal with those issues. And that takes them out of the workforce, and that takes away their financial power. It takes away control of their lives. And so we need to incentivize the importance of women in our community. And just from my wife has run a child care center for 25 years in this county. And in the past 10 years, she's worked really hard to professionalize the work that they're doing. And so right now, and I'm happy to say I was on her board for a little bit, just to get through some rough times. But I'm happy to say that right now, most of her employees are women. Hold on, let me think about this for a second. I'm gonna say most of her employees are women. And right now, if you are a woman who works for Kaleidoscope and you want to get a bachelor's degree, it's paid for. That's part of your employment. If you need medical care, they now are the only early childhood education program in San Juan County, and perhaps in the northwestern region, that full medical, dental, vision, healthcare. And also, and now full retirement. So you are elevating the ability and the empowerment of the women that are part of that organization. And we can do that across the county. We can incentivize that. If anybody wants to see the power of women in our community, I invite you to go look at all of our NGOs and nonprofits in our community and tell me who's running them. We have some of the most amazing female leaders in our community. And so from a county perspective, if I'm looking on how to work with and improve the life of women in this community, I'm gonna look to the leaders in the community, I'm gonna follow them. So I'm looking at them for leadership. I want to address the Planned Parenthood endorsement. Rick is indeed endorsed by Planned Parenthood. That was an application process. It wasn't a competition. It's not a comparative endorsement. I am proud to say that my wife, my daughters, I myself have benefited from the services of Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood isn't just there for women, it's there for everyone in our community. And the services they provide are vital and critical for our community. And we really need to be aware that the cost of delivering those services is becoming really difficult in our community. And we risk losing their services for San Juan County. And so we need to elevate the importance of their services in our community. And then speaking to reproductive rights, I'm the father of 3 girls. I'm gonna cry. My oldest daughter, quick breath. My oldest daughter had to have a medical abortion 3 years ago, 2 years ago. It was right when Roe was overturned. We cannot, if she had lived in Texas, she would either be dead or she'd be a criminal. That is not acceptable. We cannot allow that to be part of the discussion in our county, in Washington State, or nationally. And so as we look at this national election, we talk about positives and potential negatives. It is really critical that we as a county are aware of the potential harm that could come from a really bad choice. And we need to be ready to fight that to the absolute end. And so that's what you're going to get from me on county council in that respect.
Thank you.
Thank you for speaking to reproductive justice, because there were other questions about that. And also to the question of the rights of migrants and immigrant women and gender nonconforming people in our community. Trump has promised mass raids, and there's candidates up and down ballots that are echoing this claim, and we're a sanctuary county. So it's very likely that there could be a situation where the sanctuary county is threatened by federal forces in strong ways or in invisible to the public ways. What would you do from the position of this council to defend immigrants in our communities against the attacks that are coming pretty much every day, and to defend the sanctuary ordinance that many here worked on?
Should I jump on that? And I think again, Rick, I'm going to look at you and make sure that I'm correct in this, but when the sanctuary ordinance was written, I believe you were part of writing that, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
With a lot of help from the Women's Coalition and many other people in the community.
So that was really important. And I think the expectation that there will be evil acts that happen are absolutely correct. And we saw them happen in our community. We saw people picked off the ferry as boats were leaving. It was actually during when the Sydney Run was running. And so they were able to route any traffic that was hopping on the boat from the Sydney Run, and it had to clear immigration in Anacortes. And we saw families on this island, people that you all know and work with, who were split, families that were separated. Husband on the boat, going to pick up something on the mainland, picked off the ferry and deported, wife and children left here. And these are working, contributing members of our community, and they were separated. And if you want to just be really pragmatic about it, this was a working family, a working mother, a working father, 3 children, and we took one of their income producers simply because of the color of his skin, and we shipped him off to a detention facility. And now we have a family that's in crisis. And the economic effect of that, and the social effect, and the fear that brings to our community, unbelievable. So from a county perspective, again, we have to be really aware of what's happening at that national level. We have to be ready to react. I am proud to say that I was part of something that was really simple, non-legislative, behind the scenes, but it was something as simple as a phone tree. That when ICE showed up on Orcas Island, we all got on our phones and we called the allies that I know. I don't know who they were calling because that's how protected it had to be. It had to be, but I didn't know who I was calling to warn, but I was calling the person that knew that they needed to call the people who needed to be warned. And so it's really grassroots things like that we are going to have to do, because we don't get to control what the federal government does, but San Juan County, absolutely, the sanctuary ordinance is critical, and we need to live the words of that ordinance if we are in a situation like that again.
Thank you. Yeah, it was an interesting process working on that ordinance, but I 100% believe it, and it's something we might want to look at as we move forward on even making it stronger. My philosophical approach to immigration is that I don't care. Everyone that's in this community is part of our community. I don't care what their citizenship is. It it isn't the responsibility of San Juan County, our sheriffs, our deputies, or our community to turn anyone else in or be part of that. You know, I pledge to stand in front of any federal officer that comes here to do it. And the number one responsibility we have in San Juan County as council members is our budget. And I pledge we will not spend one dime that has anything to do with immigration enforcement from the federal government. It's as simple as that. You know, we have to work together. We have to have a list of allies, as mentioned. I too took part in that when someone was arrested. I think it was a Coast Guard arrest that I worked with leaders in the community to find how we could get an attorney to that person as soon as possible. Ben Nunez has been a friend of mine for a long time, and he was another person that was picked off. You know, that the sign where it says "Welcome to Washington." Well, it's actually, you know, I really question the federal government's authority to take someone off a state highway. Granted, it's within 20 miles of the border, but we need to do more to protect all of our community members. And even if they don't show up here, they being, you know, the federal government, the fact that they put the fear in citizens and families, it's just not right. And we have to get around that. We need to be interacting, and, you know, the council needs to do a better job. And I'm hoping that our county will start issuing everything that we do bilingual, that we start hiring bilingual employees so that we're able to communicate, and so that part of the community isn't fearful of the county or isn't fearful of the government. And if you guys have already done that, I apologize. Like, it does, I'm just saying if it's not there, we'll cover it. I'm seeing you shaking your head at me, so I'm not going to try to get into something you haven't done yet. But anyway, I just think we have to support our community members as community members, and everyone who lives here is part of our community. And then so we just have to act like we always have as Islanders to support each other.
Thank you. One of the reasons that people migrate to the United States is the effect of US-funded military aggression in their countries. And the county took a resolution in support of ceasefire, and there's a lot of people concerned about the genocide happening to the Palestinian people and the expansion of the war machine in the Middle East with our money that could be used for other things. And what would you do about this issue and helping make the county's opposition to this war and aggression strong and strengthening the ceasefire resolution and finding other ways to express that will of the people?
In this, are you asking specifically about the pro-Palestine or Free Palestine movement, or other movements similar that are, you know, social and justice issues? Because it could be similar but expanded.
Sure. This particular question is about the ceasefire resolution.
Okay.
And I was connecting it to the broader issue of how much of our money goes to war.
So, I mean, what I would do is I would try to reach out to the leaders to sit and listen to them. I was at a fundraiser for Rick Larson, and 5 or 6 community members voiced their concerns about Rick Larson's presence there. And it was a somewhat of a shocking experience for me, because I had not been in the island, been in kind of a confrontational thing like that. But the next couple of days, I was able to meet with a couple of the folks that were there and just suggested I'd be willing to sit down with all of you and try to better understand and listen to what your issues are, so I could try to communicate those to other elected officials around the state. I do support what they're doing and what their concerns are. I just think, you know, necessarily screaming at someone in a fundraiser may not solve that problem, but we need to listen more and work together across the entire community, again, to find a solution that, you know, that's not who we are. We're not like war people in this community, probably most of the country isn't. So how do we find, I mean, it's such a tense situation that's gone on for hundreds of years. How do we find a good solution to work together? And, you know, so I'd be willing to sit down with whomever and be educated on how I can help get their message across so that we can make a difference from different angles.
So I think people showing up and screaming and yelling is what happens when a crisis demands action. People are frustrated. This is a humanitarian crisis above all else. And it's a humanitarian crisis that's caused by government action. And so when you have a humanitarian crisis caused by government action, you turn to government people, because that's the root cause of the crisis. And yes, San Juan County is not actively engaged in any form in the Palestinian, Israeli, Lebanese, Iranian crisis. And I list all of those countries because the list seems to be getting bigger by the moment. But functionally, we are the faces that represent government action. And so we have to be willing to listen to people, and when they want to yell and scream at a fundraiser, accept that and listen to them, and hopefully take away some of their passion in that process as we go forward and do other things at the government level. I think the other piece to this that for me is very important is, as it being a humanitarian crisis, if I'm a Palestinian in San Juan County, if I'm an Israeli in San Juan County, if I'm Iranian, if I'm Lebanese, if I am of any ethnic background from the Middle East, this is a scary time to be anywhere in the world. And so we have to recognize that at the county level, that in the conversations we're having and the way that we're talking about things, we have to be really, really conscious of that. Because while the war is happening overseas, the impact are to people in our community. It is functionally impactful to the people in our community. And then I think the last piece, as we look at this, and this is a policy perspective, is the entire discussion of disinvestment. I don't know, I'm not in the county's books. I don't know exactly where all of our money is, but I believe we owe it to folks who are actually concerned about how we are functionally invested in, I believe you said the war machine. I don't want to say war machine, I don't think that's what you said, but if we as a county are somehow invested in a way that is benefiting that, we need to look at that and decide if that's how we want to work. And we may have to compromise some things to not be doing that. But I do believe we have to have the conversation and look at it.
Thank you. These are connected. I'll read them both and you all can answer in the way that you choose. So how do you feel about the Environmental Stewardship Department, and do you see value in keeping it separate from Public Works? What is your position on environmental protections in building and land use regulation? You have both talked about streamlining permitting. What exactly do you mean by that?
So I haven't heard the thread of combining Public Works and the Environmental Stewardship Department. So this is a new discussion for me. I have heard possibility of combining environmental stewardship with Department of Community and Development in terms of thinking of long-term planning, which is part of DCD and Department of Community and Development. And environmental stewardship, which is focused on dealing with the current climate crisis, making us more resilient, and really planning for the future events that are coming our direction. And so in my belief, I believe there is a deep connection between long-range planning and what environmental stewardship is doing. The Environmental Stewardship Department is doing amazing things. They handle such a wide variety of topics. That department handles utilities like solid waste. They're administering most of our marine programs. They're dealing with derelict vessels. They're dealing with some of the climate change work that's being done in the county. So it's got an incredibly broad touch of work being done in the county. So if there is any combining of departments that needs to be done for efficiencies, the key is that we don't dilute the work that those departments are doing. Shifting to the streamlining of permits, I want to be really clear that streamlining doesn't mean cutting corners. Streamlining doesn't mean skipping steps. What DCD needs more than Department of Community Development, sorry, we said we won't do that. What Department of Community Development needs more than anything is it needs leadership. And we can streamline that department without changing laws, without changing regulations, just by giving them effective leadership and making sure that they follow the rules that are in front of them. And unfortunately, we've had a really hard time over the last 20 years maintaining management and leadership in that department. And it's not the fault of any council member in this room. It's just been a really, really difficult thing to do. And so focus one in streamlining that department is really good leadership. And our current council has now hired us a new county manager. We have a new person leading the county from the county manager perspective. And by all accounts, from working with her, she's an amazing human being. And she's doing an amazing job of communicating with all the departments in the county. So I trust that that county manager is going to be able to work with council and give really clear direction to get the DCD streamlined and doing the job that they've been needing to do for the last 20 years.
So first of all, the environmental stewardship group was in DCD, and then it was moved to Public Works, and now it's its own group. So I applaud the council, not exactly current council, but Council 2021 for doing what they did in separate environmental group out. We need to protect that group 100%. I think they're very important for the future as we deal with sea level rise and climate change. I would like to look at the utilities. So there's two: stormwater utility and solid waste. Public Works should probably have some more involvement in these issues because it's their transportation infrastructure kind of programs. I mean, you still need to have the environmental group because Public Works is one of the biggest polluters just because it's our roads, it's all of us with the roads, for the stormwater utility. But it's like, and the issue going to DCD would have been not the environmental group, but it would have been, I think, planning, the DCD planning and not Public Works. But I think it's a really good group. I like the staff. It's a hard program and it's kind of in its infancy. You can't make a change in government and expect to have the solution done in 3 years or 4 years. I think it was a brilliant move that we hadn't done before, and I think it needs to be elevated to that higher level. We just got to make sure when an environmental agency or group internally within the county starts doing construction projects, that everyone's working together with the community and letting people know what's happening and that they're talking together. So like right now at the exchanger, the solid waste utility, it seems like there's 3 different entities involved in some of the projects: Public Works, Environmental Group, and then Greg Sawyer with the facility stuff. How do we streamline that a little bit so projects get done? On the permitting side, again, streamlining is just making it more efficient. We have code that's there. If we don't like the code, we need to change the code. We tried to get, when I was in office, to 12 weeks for getting permits approved. And that was a struggle to do. Now it's a lot longer. I think what we need to do for our community is just, there needs to be a level of communication consistency. Private builders should know what they're going to face. Someone building a commercial building, they should know if it's going to take 12 months, then they should know that's what it is. If it's going to take 3 months, that's what it is. I mean, we need to follow our code. We need to have, and I think they've made great strides. I'm very interested to see how the land use planning with the third party works. I mean, government's always sort of this mix of trying to find the right solution that's efficient. So, I mean, there's not really wrong answers. You're just doing your best to try to find a solution that better serves the community. But there's no intention, I think, from this council or past councils to make things more efficient and therefore cause more harm to the environment. You know, I mean, we just have to be consistent. People aren't building houses. Affordable housing, even there's the project here in Orcas, it's like 1.5 years. Why does it take so long? If county government's saying, and again, this isn't, I'm not pointing fingers at them, but if affordable housing is so important to us, why do we not have a department or at least a person that all they do is prioritize affordable housing permits and get it out the door? You know, so I think there's ways we can change things that make things more fluid, but it's been such an interesting 8 years, I guess, in government and with all the changes that it's just hard. You make your best guess decision what the right path is and you try to see it through. When it doesn't work, you try to find another path. And I think this current council's been doing that. It's a hard time to be doing anything right now.
I'm so glad you brought up housing because let's talk about housing. That's, most questions we have here about housing. So, we're gonna do a few. And actually specifically about housing affordability. So a moratorium on short-term rentals was a good start, and short-term rentals are much more available, supported, incentivized financially than long-term affordable housing, which people need. What are you gonna do about this?
I've gotten in a lot of trouble for this question, so can you restate the question again? Make sure I answer this correctly.
We need long-term affordable housing on this
Yeah.
island, and we have a lot of short-term rentals and a lot of incentives for that. So what will you do about this issue of the need for long-term affordable housing in the face of so much short-term rentals?
I think the earlier council put caps on the vacation rentals, the short-term rentals, so there really shouldn't be any new incremental vacation rentals, at least on Orcas. So that's why I was kind of asking for clarification. Well, I mean, there's many things we can do for affordable housing. I'd like, everyone says the ADU improvement, they can make ADUs easier to build, and as long as they're permanently affordable, we have the great real estate excise tax for that's on the sale of property. I would love to see more money go into, there's a current program where first-time home buyers can borrow money from the county from a down payment. I'd like to see some money go into that, so it expands. Right now it's like 5 or 6 houses, but it's a really great program because you lend someone money to buy a house and they pay mortgage back with a smaller interest, and you're recollecting that money to redistribute it. So I'd love to see something like that. I also think we need to look at access to housing. We've got really great land trust. Opal's an amazing organization here. And we need to continue to look at, like April's Grove, like workforce housing that we can get and give people a chance to have a roof over their head that's decent and safe and environmental. I wish we might have talked about this earlier, but on the natural building side, I would love to see more requirements for using natural products in San Juan County. Like for example, we have the ability to use local wood that isn't graded, and graded means one of the corporate mills come out and stamp your wood and said it's okay, but it costs a lot of money. But we have like the best wood in the state of Washington is in our county. So things like that. I don't know, I mean, there's 100 things that we do. It's like peeling back an onion. I think we need to, like I said earlier, we need to make a priority for every permit that comes in for an affordable housing project needs to be put at the top regardless of when it comes in. We need to have an ombuds person, like Ryan Page would be great from the county, that just, their job is to make sure that this permit for affordable housing has an advocate within the county to get it approved faster. And I think we need to find ways to help do, there's already a little bit of a loan program that does septic systems, because you're looking at $40,000 to $60,000 to build a house before you put a shovel in the ground. When you do, even in the urban growth area, when you look at a water membership, Opalco's fees, sewer membership, or a septic system. So how do we provide access for people to just get in there and do some programs? And I'm a big fan of tiny homes, and I'd love to have tiny homes be an outright yes in the county, and you could debate if it's the L&I version with the wheels on it or if it's foundationally based. We need to look at RV parks and tiny home parks that it's not a stigma to, when we first made the code in the 90s, it was a stigma to have an RV park. But there's one in Freddie Harbor that houses probably 60 people. I'm not saying it's the best solution, but we're looking at the shoreline management program. And one of the things that we did that I didn't want to do and did is that we limited people living on boats in marinas to 20% of the total slip space. I think that should be lifted. I mean, again, not saying everyone wants to live in a boat, but we really have to take a stab at every single option we can to get housing out there. And we need to find every source from the Opportunity Council in Whatcom County to federal government, state government, and our own local housing funds to help people get access to money, because everyone just seems to be a little bit out of it. They make just a little bit too much money to qualify for Opal, or they make a lot of money, but they can't get a first-time loan. Or they make, more money than they don't, but they can't get a loan because, especially if I've got a friend of mine who built his own tiny home, but he can't put it anywhere because he can't get a loin for empty land. So I mean, there's just so many different things we can go down to. I think the vacation rental thing, we got Cindy did a good job. There's not going to be any more in Orcas, and so hopefully, as people, it's a non-conforming issue now. There's 150 or 200 or whatever the number is that aren't, we only have a cap of like 215, so there's 400. So as they drop off, then you'll have less, and so hopefully those homes will open up.
So I think the question was about short-term rentals, or long-term rentals. I believe that was the specifics of the question that you asked, because when you look at housing, there's multiple models, right? There's home ownership, and then there's rentals. And those are different, those are very different things. And when we talk about affordable housing, we have to be really, really clear when we're talking about the things. Opal does a really great job in their inception with the home ownership model. And a piece of that a lot of folks here may not know, the first Opal neighborhood, Opal Commons, which is down on Seaview Street, when they built that, they used funds, they used government funds to help build those, and they had a period of time where they had to maintain income restrictions on those houses. Those houses have now aged out of a lot of those restrictions, and so recently we have had a whole group of homes that are now ownership-based homes that now the income restrictions are now controlled by Opal. And so that's going to add housing stock that's available to middle income. Opal can adjust those income levels. So that right there is a great positive, and it's a sign of how organizations like Opal, when they do the work they do, depending on how they finance those, you can start to see this growth of the low to no income start to feed into the housing stock for the middle income. But that's home ownership. That's not rentals. And so I had a conversation with a landlord here on Orcas, and most of our landlords in our community, they're not big, they're not BlackRock, they're not the big national mortgage holding companies. These are people like you and I who have a house and they're renting it out. And one of the biggest issues is they're inefficient. Sometimes they're substandard. Sometimes they have pretty serious functional issues with them. And it costs a lot of money to bring those things up to a standard that is humane and livable for people in our community. And these are folks who they're not swimming in cash. And so I would propose from our home fund that we create a fund to the side that is dedicated to low to no interest loans for landlords to make improvements to increase the standards of their rentals. And the tie to that would be if you accept those funds to redo the roof on your house or redo the windows in the house or put in a heat pump, you're now going to be tied to an affordability range in keeping that house available. And so that's a way, absent that, the landlord may tear the house down and sell the property. And now we've lost housing stock. So that's just maintaining what we have. As we look at our urban growth area, that's where we're supposed to focus our growth. That's where our densities are supposed to be at. So we need to be looking at density bonuses that acknowledge that a 3-bedroom house and a studio unit should not be both thought of as the same residential unit. It makes no sense. On my property, I could build a 15-bedroom, 7-bathroom house that was 10,000 square feet, and it would be the same as a 1,000 square foot house. And that's how our zoning and our density works. We need to find workforce housing. We need to find housing for seniors who simply need a 1-bedroom house that they can afford to live in. If something is zoned R12, so 12 units per acre, we could put 12 3-bedroom houses on that. But what if a builder wants to put a bunch of 1-bedroom or studio units on that and maybe double that density? We should be looking at our code and how can we incentivize that, because that's going to give us housing that's available at a lower price point because it costs less to build. So that's a very practical way of doing it, and we can do that. We're doing code review right now. The UDC is being reviewed by the county right now, and that's a way that we can influence the UDC by giving those density bonuses. And then the discussion of ADUs. I think we must have a discussion of ADUs, but if we're going to have a discussion of ADUs, we must acknowledge the fact that 20 years ago we fought this battle, and the battle cry of everybody who was against it was double density. And so we have to do it in a way that acknowledges that we're not just going to keep adding and adding and adding and burdening the carrying capacity of the resources on our island. So when we do that legislation, we need to get a lot of folks at the table so that we have that conversation at the front end so that we don't end up in a 10-year lawsuit over how and where we're going to make ADUs more available for our community.
Thank you. I heard the saying that to live on Orcas, you have to have 3 homes or 3 jobs. Let's talk about class inequality, because one of the aspects of the housing affordability problem we have, which is raised here is there's a lot of empty homes. There's a lot of gorgeous homes that sit empty 9, 10, 11 months out of the year. There are 2 questions about a vacant home tax, like Vancouver and Oakland have, and rent caps. How will you support and protect tenants living in unstable, substandard, and unsafe housing? So it's a 3-parter. Vacant home tax, rent cap, and tenants living in unsafe, substandard, and unstable housing.
1 second. I want to make sure I get all 3 questions written down so that I'm dealing with all of them. Vacant home taxes is a really difficult one because Washington State, it would be unconstitutional for us to issue a vacant home tax in San Juan County. So from that perspective, I think that is going to be something that we have to address at the legislative level. We are going to have to figure out how to work with the state legislature to figure out how to deal with that. I would probably take a different bend than the vacant home tax, and that's because I'm more of a carrot person than I am a stick person. Is there a way to incentivize homeowners who have vacant spaces and vacant homes on their property? Let's say you have a house, you have your vacation house, and you have your guest house that's associated with it, and both of those are sitting empty. Is there a way that we as a county can incentivize through either a property tax offset, some program that says, hey, if you will make that house available long-term, we're gonna try and incentivize you to do this. Because if we start going to the legislature and trying to make what are some constitutional changes, holy smokes, I don't know that I'll be around to see the results. And so I think that addresses my feelings on the vacant home tax. Rent caps, again, also very difficult to administer when you're dealing with a lot of small individual landlords and homeowners. I will confess, I am not an expert in rent control. I've never lived in a metropolitan area where I was subject to rent control discussions. I do know that when you're dealing with the pockets that we deal with, we have so many rentals that are completely off the grid and nobody even knows they exist. They're being done off the books. There's no license required to rent your home to a renter. And so how do you control that which you have no idea exists? So that's going to be really difficult. But I think that we can, again, through carrots, incentivize, and this is getting back into the ADU discussion. If I can incentivize somebody to build an ADU, I can give them the plans. They're pre-approved, they're pre-engineered. And I can say, hey, we'll do this for you. And we will allow you an exemption on the current land use restrictions. If you build this house and you make it available as a year-round rental within X income guidelines. And it doesn't have to be, it can be tied to whatever income San Juan County sets because we're not involving state and federal funds in the construction of the home. We're just incentivizing getting this work done. That's gonna add stock and is going to, in effect, cap the rent for that space because we are going to say it must be in this in order for you to even do the work. Unsafe and substandard housing, that is a huge, huge issue that we face here. I came to San Juan County living in an RV. And I don't say that because it was a bad way to live. I was a traveling construction worker and it allowed me to get my work done in multiple locations. And we have a ton of folks living in our community in RVs, in tents, in various states of substandard living. That's not to say that that's a bad thing. For a lot of folks, it's their first step in being able to get a foothold to move on to the next step in life, which is a little bit more stable housing. But if it's unsafe and it's substandard, then the county has an obligation to step in and offer assistance. And I will go back to what I said earlier about the low interest or no interest home loans for landlords. If we can incentivize a landlord to get that place up to standard and increase the living standard of our community members, that's a really good thing. If we go at that landlord and tell them, and we hammer them with regulation, they're gonna kick that person out of the house and we've lost housing stock. So we need to figure out what can we do to help our landlords, to help our homeowners raise their standard of living through county programs which already exist.
Yeah, the vacancy tax, as was mentioned, is something that's not currently legally allowed. That definitely worth a discussion in Olympia, though. It brings up another kind of tax that I've been interested in. Cortex Island up in Canada and the Gulf Islands has passed a 3% vacation rental tax on non-hotel rooms, so VRBOs or Airbnbs. And Senator Loveland and I have been working on Senate Bill 52, I think it's either 5420 or 5240, which gives local governments the ability to either put on the ballot or make a council decision to add that a percentage amount to the existing tax for only Airbnbs and VRBOs. So not exactly the same thing you're talking about, empty houses. And sometimes I think we need to be a little bit careful. I don't think, well, you may have meant that, all these big mansions that people come and use them 2 days a year or whatever. There's also a lot of people that are, middle class folks that fortunate enough at one point in time to either inherit a piece of land or buy a piece of land here that they come up for 20 years to work on that house. And it may not, my family is the same way. My uncle worked at Boeing. My grandparents gave my uncle a piece of land and he and the neighbors built all the houses together that he eventually retired to. So there's sort of, I think, a different, one's more like I'm a local, I'm gonna live here, but I can't afford it yet and I'm trying to get there. But I think we have to look at ways to get people to wanna house people. I think the guest house is an interesting thing. We talk about that. Most people probably don't want to have 1,000 square foot or less house within 100 feet of them. I think if we can open it up to 300 feet, if we could we allow people to build a shop that has a bedroom and a bathroom in it, that can be 1,000 feet away and have its own septic driveway and water, but because it doesn't have a kitchen, it's allowed to be built. If you throw a kitchen in there, and part of me just thinks we need to have the strength to have the discussion in the community and work with people like the Friends of San Juan's that we had this issue in the past, because the times now, environmental community, working community, communities in general want to see affordable housing. You may have a house and you're getting older and you want to build a guest house for a caregiver or a family member. Or you just, I've got friends that just want to help local community members that are trying to get a start that need a place to live. And so I think, we just need to be open to those ideas and work together to get things passed that really, and a lot of us just sitting down and having community conversations. Like, I don't want to think I know what someone who just moved to the island wants to live in. It's a little bit presumptuous to me. Like, how do we create alternative things? Roach Harbor Resort does a really great thing where they have a center bunkhouse or a center room that has a kitchen and a community facility and laundry facilities. And then they have basically 10 tiny homes that are foundationally based that other people live in, but they have that shared space. And I'm hearing from some people that I've been talking to that people don't necessarily mind shared space, especially in their 20s. Maybe as they migrate with families into 30s, it's not as an interesting opportunity, but I think it's kind of that dorm capacity. So we just need to look at everything and not be in a vacuum and think we have the solution, but to really ask the people that are looking for housing what they would like to see and what makes their stability happen. I think that farm worker housing is a whole other concept. Like, how do we put together and find ways that isn't gonna maximize the density, but give people an opportunity to farm the land. And food sovereignty and housing and job security, I think they're all kind of mushed together and important subjects that we have to tackle. So I don't have an answer on the rent capping again. I think it's not something we currently legally can do. But I think we need to encourage people who have empty space and want to lease it out. And there is a fear for landlords that people destroy their houses over long term. And there's going to be natural wear and tear on properties when people are there versus sitting open and renting a few times. But I think I'm not sure if we could reduce property tax. That's a question. A lot of the property tax is preset by the state. We take a smaller portion of the overall property tax. But I'm open to look at all the ideas, both legally and to work with people that I'm friends with in Olympia to find good solutions for housing. And then finally, the craziest thing about the unsafe housing, and Justin touched on this a little bit, there's such a fear of loss of housing, but it's not right and it's not fair. People deserve, if they're paying rent, to have a safe place, and it shouldn't be mold, there should be real bedrooms or whatever the place they want to live in. And, we probably should have, there's the council has a really good vacation rental annual kind of renewal permit that you do. And so maybe we ought to look at a health permit that goes to people renting houses. It's not something we've ever done before, because basically if you rent the house for more than 30 days, you don't have to do anything. There's no sales tax that you have to file your federal returns, and that's the way we could find out about it. But I think we need to figure out ways to get dignity or allow every person in this county needs to have the dignity of a safe, clean place to live. And so we got to figure out how to get there. And the health department's usually a good way to get there. But we all have to work together, and council's not going to know about this. So is there a way for us to have some kind of anonymous complaint line? I don't know what it is, because no one's going to complain about their landlord because they're going to lose their space. So how do we get around that one issue? So it's like this weird circle of, we want to help people, but it's not safe. But if they find out that they complain, then they're going to lose their space, and then we have this fear of housing.
Right. Except for retaliating against somebody for exercising their rights is against the law. And so there are protections against that kind of eviction written into state law that could be strengthened. So just to put my 2 cents in here.
And especially on the month-to-month situation, I think there needs to be that, because the problem is if you have a month-to-month relationship, then you just let it expire. So how do we provide that extra protection, working with Olympia to put that together?
Can I just chime in one more thing?
As we were talking about the complaint issue, OCRC, Orcas Community Resource Center, has just hired an individual to work as a housing liaison. And that individual is receiving input from and kind of working through the landlord-tenant, is knowledgeable of landlord-tenant law. And I think that's a really great service that as the county we can be supporting OCRC in, because what that allows is sort of a third-party contact, so that when there's an issue, that person can help to negotiate and hopefully find a way to improve the situation and hopefully eliminate that blowback through the landlord-tenant law. You're right, it is protected, but man, is it really hard to get enforcement on any side of that, because essentially everybody's hands off and says, no, that's a civil issue. And most of our tenants who are facing that problem are not well-resourced to fight a civil issue. But I do believe a third party like OCRC is currently using is a great resource that we can support as a county.
I'm not well-resourced to fight yet. There, one more question about unsafe housing also is one of the more invisible aspects of lack of safety in housing is the experience of seniors and the access to supportive housing and to the services that people need, the sense of community and connection that we all need. What are your ideas for making it possible for older Orcasunians to stay on the island?
Such an important topic for a lot of reasons. The elder community in our islands is a huge source of information, a wealth of information. There is actual wealth that's tied to that. And every time we lose a senior member of our community, we lose a little bit of the really good energy that gets a lot of the nonprofit work in our community done. And so it's really important that we do everything we can to knock down barriers to people staying here. I talked earlier about, as we're working on affordable housing, making sure that we have units that fit that demographic and incentivizing units that fit that demographic. We've had a lot of folks that I've worked with, especially through Opal, who are previous residents of Orcas who lived out in Deer Harbor, or they lived out in Olga, or they lived out in Spring Point, whatever. And they were beginning to get to a point where they couldn't care for themselves anymore. The house was too big. And when we did the Wild Rose Meadow project up on Opal, there was some of that housing that was subsidized by state and federal money. There was some of that housing that was funded with private money. There were even some folks who were looking to get closer to town and closer to services, who were like, I'm gonna sell my house and I'm gonna give Opal money to build me a house so I can continue to live in town. And so that's a creative way of mixing those funds to make sure that these projects can hit multiple income levels in multiple situations. The the ultimate answer is, and this is not a happy one, there is a point where the services required are not gonna be available on the island. So we have to, we cannot be over idealistic in saying we are going to be able to keep everybody on Orcas Island until their last day. It's just not gonna be possible. But what we do need to do is have policies that keep people who want to be here as long as they can possibly be here, and give them that opportunity. So I would love, I hope that I can have my last day on Orcas Island, but I accept the possibility that we're an island and the services aren't going to exist to keep me here until that point.
I don't know if it's the county's right or responsibility to decide when someone should or shouldn't live on Orcas Island. I think we do the best we can to provide the resources to give people who want to age in place that opportunity. I was speaking to Opal the other day, and I was asking another category, and maybe this isn't the right form for this, but also veterans. Veterans fall in that format as well as seniors do, that oftentimes misplaced, displaced, not having resources. And one thing that's interesting is that they were telling me that seniors and veterans don't want to be isolated necessarily in their own center, or they want to be in a community with a 30-year-old who has a family. And I think that there's a lot of opportunities as we look at different models as we continue our housing plans that are integrated models that bring in veterans and seniors and new families and single people all together in a community that, if you have 30 or 40 houses and it's evenly split between different groups, I think it can be a very interesting path for a kind of regenerative community. The point is, it's hard to get resources here. Ferries are terrible. You're going to miss appointments. We don't have the ability to care for people consistently, or it's a struggle. But I think we need to try, and we're very fortunate that we have the best rating with our fire department. I think the county does. I think it's 8 minutes to get to, or 9 minutes once you get on an airlift place to get there. One of the best heart attack survival rates in the state of Washington. So I think that we have these services to help folks out. The county needs to figure out, to work with state and federal, and I mentioned the Northwest Regional Council, maybe the Opportunity Council. How do we provide a layer of benefits for people who care for people who are sick? Right now, we have a lot of caregivers that the people that work for don't have long-term health care insurance. Or if they do, they can't use it because that person isn't insured, isn't licensed, isn't whatever. So can't we start the education process here, building a fundamental bank of benefits, retirement, medical, basic quality of life for these caregivers? It's interesting, when I was working at the Opportunity Council, which is an entity in Bellingham that serves San Juan Island and Whatcom County. It's a poverty elevation community action network. And when I came in the first board meeting, I noticed that we have staff members that are trying to help people get out of poverty that we were paying $17 an hour. First thing we did was raise the rates. How can you have someone who's trying to help stabilize someone's life and get them out of a crisis if you're barely paying a minimum wage? So we need to work with our entities. We need to provide better real family wage jobs, help train as many caregivers as we can possibly, and get licensed program. I'm sure our health department can work on a plan like that. So people can make that decision for themselves. We got to continue, I think, to build infrastructure that's ADA and senior compliant. I think we have a great thing with the track that was built that allows anyone in our community to have access for exercise. We have many different medical options. So I think we, as a community, how do we ask the people that want to age in place here what services we can help provide?
Thank you. We are at time. Let's not bury the lead. Why should we vote for you? Why should we vote for you?
Well, thank you for being here and for hosting this. Thank you everyone for being part of it. I really appreciate the Women's Coalition and all the work they do in our community. Well, my name is Hughes and I'm running for county council. And I have done that job before. It's something that while I made mistakes, I think I did a pretty good job in getting programs done. I'm endorsed by the Washington Conservation Action Committee, Planned Parenthood, as I mentioned, the Secretary of State, Hillary Franz, from the Department of Natural Resources, all three of our local, Liz Lovett, Alex Rammel, and Jared Lickenoff. I'm endorsed by Joe Timmons, people all across the state. People have asked, they're looking forward to me having an opportunity to work with them again. I understand how Olympia works. I understand how the county works. We hired the last county manager when I was there, and I took part in almost all of the legislation that was written that's helped us be compliant with the GMA that we now need to relook at again because it took so long to pass. So I'm a third generation Islander. My wife and I have run businesses here for a long time. All of our employees we provide healthcare for, full healthcare, dental. We pay family wage jobs. We do retirement savings. Every entity that I've worked with that helped bring our working folks up in salary and benefits. I understand the county, I understand how government works. As I mentioned earlier, it's sort of a weird thing. The code makes sense to me, but it's something I understand. I can hit the ground running, and I'm looking forward to having an opportunity to work and serve again. It's the number one thing that I want to do, and at the end of my working career is to serve San Juan County. I've done it in several different ways. We were the second biggest shop provider during the pandemic, and I sat in the parking lot and gave COVID vaccines and was the only ring tester for Orcas for a period of time, almost a year. And my wife and I and our families before that have been service providers and helped the community any way we could in good times and bad, and I want to continue that on. It's just an honor to have the opportunity to work and serve here. And, I pledge to do the best I can to listen to everyone I can, get back to you within 48 hours, and try to be a balanced, pragmatic person to help solve problems in the community. Thank you very much.
So like Rick, I've been here for about 20 years. As I mentioned earlier, I came here in an RV, dragging a construction crew with me, and I came here specifically to work for an affordable housing provider. In doing that work, I met my wife, who lived up the hill in an affordable housing development, who is only on Orcas because due to a divorce, she didn't have a place to live. And she went to Opal and she said, I need a house. And Opal said, well, we don't have anything. Oh, but we have this one house that nobody wants to live in. And she said, I'll take it. And I think as the story goes, she brought a bottle of wine and a bouquet of flowers to the woman who owned the house, who had won the lottery and no longer wanted the house anymore, and said, hey, Donna, can I have your house? And Donna said, sure, take it. And so with the help of a neighborhood, with the help of her community, they all rallied together and they went into the house and they ripped the doors off and they put the whole thing together. And that's why she's here. And the service that she provides to the community is an example of what happens when you keep people here and you allow them to grow. And I benefited from that, from being a vagabond on the road, to getting stabilized here. And now I have made my work to do a ton of work in housing in our community. And I work with Opal, not because Opal hired me to do the work necessarily, but I believe in the work that they do, and I've seen the lives that it has changed in our community. And I'm proud to say that through the work of some of the work from the Home Fund that has come from the Land Bank REIT, and then through their amazing work as an organization, we're saying that I've been involved in about 50 different affordable housing residences in the community. I think it's closer to 100, but I quit counting. I don't know. I've worked with Lavender Hollow, I've worked with the Wild Rose Meadow development. I helped build the houses out in Deer Harbor that are Opal owned on that beautiful, beautiful views. And it's become part of my service to the community. Through all of that, I have worked with nonprofits in our community, several different nonprofits community, and right now I am a founding board member of a group called Recovery and Community, and it is focused on addiction and recovery services and connecting people with those services at the time that they need them. And housing is a big part of that discussion. I am the housing liaison for that group, and we've discovered that services in our community are difficult, and so I really want to do work at the county level to figure out how can we bring those services to people so that we don't have to displace people who are struggling with addiction and recovery. I take a different bend than my opponent. I haven't spent a bunch of time in Olympia. I've testified at transportation hearings as my work as a ferry advisory committee chairperson. But before I go charging down to Olympia as a San Juan County Council person, my first job is going to be sit with my teammates and figure out what our priorities are when we go down to Olympia. We need to be really organized when we go down there. We are just one county of many that is going down to Olympia and making requests for money to accomplish our projects. And if we go down without without organizing with our seatmates and working as a team, we're not going to get the work done that we need to get done. And I can say that I look forward to, if I'm elected to San Juan County, I can tell to the San Juan County Council, knowing who's running from District 1 and knowing who's already sitting on the county council, I look forward to being the third smartest person in the room. I think it's, and I see that as an opportunity. So I hope that in conversations in forums like this, that what you walk away from is that you have a true public servant in your presence, and I'm looking forward to doing the work.
Thank you. Thanks for this rich discussion. We got all the way into it, and I really appreciate that, you know. Thanks to all of you for being involved. Thanks to the Women's Coalition for organizing this. And just a reminder, voting is politics, but it's just the beginning, actually. Once you get in there, you have to figure out what to do. No matter who gets elected, they're gonna need the help of the other person that's sitting here and of all of you to try to manifest our values. So let this be the continuation of a conversation. And in that spirit, please pick up your chair and put it over there. So there's 6 tables and a long table that go.
Nice job, Rick.
Yeah, good job.
Thank you.